and spent the night praying to God. What is something special there? Spend the night. Who started all-night prayer meeting? Jesus. Don't take credit to give credit to anybody. He started it. He was a man. He spent all night in praying to God. And when morning came, he called his disciples to him and so, and chose 12 of them. So not only early morning, day of baptism, and often, but he took time off all night to go and pray. It's not easy to pray, one man praying all night. It's very difficult. As a group we can manage, but sometime you fell asleep. But that's not, that's okay. Even if you attempt to pray all night, that's great. We have also a challenge to midnight prayer every first of the month. We ask people, we don't force them. We just gently tell them, if you could get up at 10 to 2 o'clock on first of every month, praying especially against the strongholds of this nation, it will be great. And there are some who are already in that midnight prayer. It's not something great that we are doing. It's only a small thing when you compare your prayer life with the life of Jesus. So mountainside to pray and spend all night in praying to God. And then Matthew 14:23. Matthew 14, all related to his prayer life. And when you look at these things, we get an idea how important prayer was to Jesus and how he meticulously followed the discipline needed for it. 14, verse 22 and 23. Immediately Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowd. After he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountain by himself to pray. When the evening came, he was there alone. Now, what do we see here? Again, evening, yes. But again, he applies discipline in his life to pray. That's where we lack. What did he do in order to find time to pray? What? He dismissed whom? First of all, he dismissed the crowd. Secondly, he dismissed the disciples. That's how he found time for himself to pray. And then he went on to the mountain to pray. In order to really get into the habit of praying, we have to dismiss certain things which are not priorities in our life. We have to dismiss. Well, if I say something, you may not like it, but how many times did you close your TV? It's time to pray. It never happened, isn't it? You never even thought of it. So much of the time goes. There's nothing wrong in watching TV. But the only thing I say is that there is no record in heaven of the time you spend before the TV. But there will be a record on what you spend on your knees. Are you getting embarrassed? It is true. There will be no record in heaven of the time you spend before the TV. But there will be always a record of how much time you spend on your knees. So sometime as Jesus said, hey, shut up means shut up now. And open up. Yes, you should control the TV, not TV controls you. There's a big difference in that. So Jesus dismissed the crowd, and then what? He dismissed the disciples in order to find time to pray. Do you see his heartbeat? Do you see his discipline in his life? Is prayer that important to Jesus? Can you ask that question? Very safely you can do that. Prayer was the most important thing in his life. Yet prayer is the least important thing in his church today, unfortunately. Any great men of God used was disciplined in the life of prayer. More than anything else. But we know this. Sometimes we may not think through. So when you hear these things, when you see these things in the life of Lord Jesus Christ, we have to humble ourselves and say, Lord, help me also to discipline my life. After he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. When the evening came, he was there alone. What does that communicate to us? In between the line. What time Jesus went to the mountain to pray? Morning. If evening came, that means he must have been there in the morning, which means all day. We just read a reference about all night. Now this is about all day praying. Jesus spent at the mountain all day, after dismissing the crowd and after dismissing his disciple. What a tremendous thing for us to learn. Now Luke chapter 9, verse 18, I'm quickly mentioning this because in our study time, in our lecture time in Quiet Corner, we take a lot of time to expose more of the truth therein. And verse 18, he says, 9:18, once when Jesus was praying in private and disciples were with him. Again we see him praying. He was praying. Although the disciples were with him, they were not praying with him. He didn't look at the crowd to join in order to pray. Sometimes we look at, for people to join us for praying. But no, I don't think you need to all the time. It is good if people come. Whether people come or not, others come or not, if God gives you a heart and a burden to pray, you pray. Forget the rest. So, whether the disciples were not with him or not, he went and spent praying alone in private. Yes, he prayed publicly. We will see another reference, we will see that. But he went also very often privately to spend time. 2-3 references we read before was privately. He went out to pray. And then 9:28, interesting verse 28, about 8 days later, after Jesus said this, he took Peter, John and James, 3 favorite disciples. If he had any favorite disciples, these were they. Peter, John and James with him went up on a mountain to pray, not seeking for election, vote. How many bishops and pastors have taken past days with them to a resort? A politician does that. In the church also we do it. To what? To pray. Not seeking vote. Jesus didn't need anybody's vote. He took them specifically to pray with them. Here you saw him praying alone, though the disciples were there, but he picked up these 3. He sensed that they would be all right. They were not ready for this kind of warfare. Actually, the disciples were not. But they were all observing him. And so what happened to the prayer meeting? As he was again praying, the appearance of his face changed and his clothes became as bright as the flash of the lightning. 2 men, Moses and Elias, appeared in glorious splendor. Wonderful. But verse 32, what happened to Peter and his companions? Peter and his companions were very sleepy. What a disappointed prayer meeting. Isn't it? I tell sometimes people, those who have problem with sleeplessness, go to a prayer meeting. Now, it's not a joke, it's so true. If you go to a prayer meeting, automatically sleep will come. You don't have to work on it. And you and I have done that. So here you are, 3 key men close to the heart of Jesus. He took them specifically to pray with them while sleeping. Yes, they were tired, no doubt. There's no excuse. They were sleeping, but who lost the glory? So they were sleepy and they missed the glory of God appeared on Moses, Elijah, and on Jesus. There was and Peter and his companions were sleepy, but when they became fully awake, they saw his glory and the 2 men standing with them. Just a brief moment. Peter said to him, Master, it is good for us to be here. Let us put up 3 shelters. What a man. He's the first one to speak. He was sleeping all the time. Just now woke up and saw the glory. He's thinking of himself. It's a good place to be here. Now, sometimes when you sleep, when the church sleeps, we miss the glory of God. The glory may be there, but you don't see it. In your own life, when you lead continuously a prayerless life, you also miss that divine touch in your own life, that fellowship which you ought to have. You become dry sometimes. A lot of people say it's dry Christians. A lot of dry Christians these days. There's no joy. I'm not talking about you, but there are people. There is nothing in them because they miss that fellowship with the Father, which Jesus had every day, according to what we can find from his life. And so here we are. Peter said it was too late for Peter to say that, and Jesus said it's time to get down. So you had the opportunity, yet you missed it. And sometime in heaven we have to confess the opportunity you had as a Christian to attend prayer meeting and to be there, but you missed it. So what happened when a pastor asked you, brother, why didn't you come for the prayer meeting? Usually it's 4 numbers, at least he expects you to see there. And what is the first answer we give? Suppose the pastor asks you, and you couldn't go to the last prayer meeting. What is the answer which we often give? I may be wrong. Shall I tell you? I just didn't have time. I was urgent. I didn't have time. If you say that, you are telling the most serious lie in the world. Why? The great lie in your life. If you say that to him, and the greatest lie that you can say in your life is this: I didn't have time to go to prayer meeting. You know why? Why did I say that? Is there anybody here busier than Jesus? Can I see anybody here? Busier than Jesus? No. Then never say that. When it comes to prayer, never say, give some other excuse, but don't say that you didn't have time, because you're telling a lie. It is honestly, it is true. You have time, but you didn't have the heart. You didn't find it important. In Kerala, I used to say, I don't know whether it's happening now or not, I'm out of Kerala for some years. When the prayer meeting comes, husband say, you go. You go. The ladies goes to prayer meeting, men goes to the, you go. Because prayer meeting is not that important for this young man who sits in the board or the committee or anything. That's important for him, but not prayer meeting. So my wife, I sent him for prayer meeting. See, that's kind of an, thinking when it comes to prayer. So unfortunate it is, because none of them knew the priority of prayer in Jesus' life. He didn't send anybody else, he himself went. Right? So already you know that you have no excuses anymore, right? When it comes to prayer, no excuses. No excuses. So here's a wonderful truth about Jesus. But even then, Jesus didn't blame Peter or John. No. He didn't blame them. He bare with them. He modeled his life before them, not pushing them. You cannot push people into prayer meeting. God must lay upon their heart a burden and a concern. And the day will come when they will realize they need to seek his face. Not occasionally, for emergency, but as usual, every day in their life. Now here comes, and then Luke chapter 11. That's a turning point. Turning point in the prayer life of Jesus and disciples. One day, Jesus was praying in a certain place. When he finished, one of his disciples said to him, Lord, what? Teach us to pray. Teach us to pray. That was a breakthrough. Jesus was longing to see that day in their life. For the first time it occurred to them, after seeing the Master again spending so much time in prayer, that prayer indeed was important in his life. And they lacked it. They lacked it in their life. So it such an impact came to their life, and all they could say is, Lord, teach us to pray. At least we should, every day you can pray that prayer, because none of us are qualified to pray the kind of prayer that Jesus wants us to pray. Teach us to pray. Lord, teach me to pray. I don't know much about prayer. I struggle to spend a few minutes in prayer. I struggle to discipline my life in prayer. But Lord, teach me to pray. That's humbling yourself. There's nothing wrong in telling Jesus what you really is, what you are really is feeling. So Jesus was very happy. They quoted John the Baptist as an example, just as John taught his disciples, which means the priority in John the Baptist also was prayer. We don't hear much about it. We don't read much about it in the New Testament. But from this reference, we can see that John was also a great man of prayer. Is prayer important? Is prayer important to Jesus? Yes. Is prayer important to John the Baptist? Yes. And then he says, Father, he teaches them, Father, when you pray, Father, hallowed be your name, your kingdom come. That's the thing. That's the kingdom prayer. It is the kingdom. Intercessory prayer is kingdom prayer. We will go into it later on. So here, the Lord teaching them to pray. That was a happy day in Jesus' life. He saw it. The disciple got that priority in his own life, prayer. They want to learn to pray. Somebody said that some time ago, a friend of Billy Graham went to him and said, Sir, if I bring